What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Frankie D'Astoli Show. I am your host, Frankie D'Astoli. As always, I'm excited to have you guys here. I hope everybody had a phenomenal Easter, and I hope that you had a really, really fruitful Lent, and I hope that the Easter Sunday was a beautiful representation of kind of going from this suffering period of Lent to this celebratory resurrection, coming of Jesus Christ moment. And I know that for me, at least, it definitely has been that. Lent was a really, really great experience this year. We did Exodus 90 again, which I've talked about a handful of times on the show, which is 90-day spiritual retreat where you give up things like TV, alcohol, sweets. You take only cold showers. You do an hour of prayer a day. And Exodus 90 is a transformative 90 days. And then you kind of pad in Lent in there as well, which through this Lent we had, when I say we, I really mean like me and some of my boys, my cousin and my brother-in-law did this as well. But we had some really great fasting days where we fasted till 3 o'clock some days. Holy Week fast till 5 o'clock. We did a 40-hour fast leading up to Easter Sunday. And why that's also important is because it's a reminder of the suffering that Jesus Christ took on for us. And then we have an opportunity to unite ourselves with Christ through suffering. And I've had some people that say like, oh my gosh, like fasting, why are you fasting? That can't be good for you. I think ultimately, I'm not like a health nut by any means, but like I think there is some studies out there that say fasting is good for you. But in any regard, I don't do it because it's good for my body. I do it because it's good for my soul. It unites me closer to Christ. It helps me partake in it. Fasting and really food in general is one of the biggest triggers for our bodies, right? We feel like we can't function without it. It's a way for us to be reminded that we could, carry through with Christ as we go through some of those struggles. And then you get to Easter Sunday and it's, a feasting. It's a time of feasting. We go from a time of fasting to a time of feasting. And it was an awesome, awesome day. My son, Francis, his first Easter, Bernadette's second Easter. And it was just terrific. It was terrific with family. So I'm very appreciative of it. And now we enter into the Easter season and kind of on an interesting note, obviously we have the passing of Pope Francis. So we pray for his soul. May he rest in eternal peace with Jesus Christ. And we look to a new time of bringing on a new pope. So if you are very involved in the Catholic faith, this is a very interesting time. It's a very important time. The church itself has a lot of confusion right now. There's a lot of divide. And it's interesting. I heard somebody say on a podcast that I was listening to, on the Taylor Marshall podcast, if you don't listen to him, he's a great Catholic podcast to listen to. But someone was saying on that show, maybe Pope Francis was here to, maybe it was part of God's plan to bring a little bit of division to ignite the Catholic people to, pursue a deeper faith and really try to reform the church in a positive manner. And that's a really great way that I heard it because, and this is not me trying to like necessarily talk negatively about a pope that just passed, but there was a lot of division because of a lot of things that he rolled out. And there was a lot of question marks that were put on the faith. I think ultimately whoever steps in next is going to have a really, really pivotal point of what the direction of the church is going to go. So it's very interesting. I'm definitely watching it closely. But again, all that to say, I hope everybody had a great Easter. I hope that you continue to focus in on this Easter as a time of feasting, but also a time of just God's love and his absolute devotion towards us and our pursuit to heaven. So I am going to talk about today a very interesting story that has happened in my life. And I've talked about, my faith on the show so many times. And I've talked about, things like buying the house that I fell in love with my wife in and how I drove past it, made the sign of the cross over it, and 3 days later, the seller ended up texting me saying that they wanted to sell, right? I'm sure I've dropped a bunch of other things in there as well last year, leaving my W-2 job and all of the, direction that I was given from doing that. Well, it's interesting because, and I'm going to get a little more, I don't necessarily think vulnerable is the right word, but I'm just going to kind of, let you guys know some things that are going on under the hood. When you're a real estate investor, when you're an entrepreneur in general and you leave your job, there's a lot of ups and downs, right? There's a statistic out there that says like 2/3 of every business fails within the first year. And after that, like another like 80% of the businesses that survive fail within the first 5 years. All of that is very true. And I think when everybody gets into it, you kind of think like, oh, well, my business is not going to fail. Like it's just not. And then you hit these roadblocks. And ultimately, I think what is actually the true difference maker is the ability to just keep going, right? And there has been a handful of times within D&D equities that, my partner Steve and I, we've hit these roadblocks. We've just been like, man, like, I think this might be it. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know how we're going to get out of this. And somehow we find a way out. And when I say we, I really refer that to some way God gets us out of these situations, right? But I had one that was really, really pressing and was very, very much on the forefront of my mind. So about 90 days ago, as of yesterday, I'm recording this on April 23rd, as of yesterday, April 22nd, 90 days ago, our lender pulled our credit to do refinances. And just to give everybody some context here, the way that my partner Steve and I make money at this moment is we make most of our money through the refinances of our properties. So when we purchase a property, we buy it at a discounted rate. We renovate those properties. And when we renovate those properties, what we're building is something called sweat equity. That's what a lot of people will refer to, right? Basically, our contractors, I'm not swinging a hammer, so I'm not saying it from my perspective, but we send our contractors in there, they renovate this house. And if we put $40,000 worth of work into it, the house value will typically go up by about, $80,000 to $100,000 worth of work, right? So when we add, material and labor into the mix, we get rewarded through equity built in the house. Equity is the difference between what the house is worth and what we owe on the property, how much money we owe on it, right? So if the house is worth $100,000 and we owe $50,000 in debt on the house, we have $50,000 worth of equity. So when we renovate these houses, we're increasing that equity. We're increasing the stake that we have, the equity that we're able to tap into the house. Then we rent these properties out and then we refinance them, right? This is all called the Burr method, the Burr strategy, which I talk about consistently on the show. But once we rent the property out, yes, we make money through the cash flow. But what you need to understand is when you're scaling a portfolio, and as of April 21st, 2 days ago, we bought our 20th house. Even though we have, 13, 14 tenants right now, when we have these other 5, 6 houses that are vacant, there's no money being made on those houses, right? In a sense, they're almost actually more of like a liability than an asset because they're pulling money out of our pocket every single month. Now, when we cash flow on these other houses, thankfully now, which it wasn't always this case, but thankfully now we're at a point where we're able to cover those other mortgages and still make a little bit, but not enough for Steve and I to live off of at the moment. So basically, the whole plan on this is to consistently scale this portfolio over the next couple of years, get it up to 50, 75, 100 doors, and have enough money in cash flow where Steve and I could say, all right, we're just going to pull back right now. We're going to let appreciation do its thing. We're going to live off the cash flow, and we're going to take some other investment opportunities and maybe make some money that way too. That's kind of our MO. But where we make money right now, because the cash flow is really kind of just helping on the stability aspect of the portfolio, is we make money through the refinances, and more specifically, the cash out refinances. So I'll put it in perspective one more time. We buy a house for, let's just say $50,000, right? We put $50,000 worth of work into it. We're all in the house for $100,000. The house then appraises for $175,000 or $200,000. The bank is going to give us a new loan based off of that appraised value, right? So if the appraised value is $200,000, the bank is going to say, cool, we're going to give you a loan for 75% of that $200,000. And what you're able to do with that loan is you're able to pay off your other existing loan of $100,000. And whatever remaining balance is left there, you could have in your pocket as equity that was built in the house. It's a little bit of it's your money that you put into it. You could take it out and you could do what you choose with it. Another beautiful thing about this is it's tax-free money because it's equity in the house. It's not a capital gain. I know I'm getting a little bit in the weeds here, but I'll give you a numeric example. Let's say we buy it for $50,000. We put $50,000 into it. It's all in $100,000 worth into that house. It appraises for $200,000. The bank gives us 75%. That's $150,000. Minus the loan of $100,000, that's $50,000. minus out another $12,000 in closing costs. That's $38,000, right? And that's a really, really good example, right? That's a very, very good example. They're not all like that, I promise. But that's just to kind of give you guys an idea. So when we do these cash out refinances, we are then getting paid for the work that we've done, which is sending our contracted crew in there, doing the jobs, renovating the houses, managing the projects. Flippers don't do that, right? Flippers just sell it for the value. So if they sold it for $200,000 and they put $100,000 worth of work into it, they would have $100,000 in profit, all other things being equal. Why we do the cash out refinances and why we don't flip is because we're in it for the long term, right? We're in it for the cash flow, which is going to eventually treat us well in the next, 1 to 2 to 3 years. So we're not taking the full equity out of the house because we don't want to sell the full value of the home. We want to hold the value of the home. We want to hold the actual asset and then have our tenants pay us every single month on it. But because of the way that we buy them at such a discounted price, thanks to our lead gen, structure, and because of our contracting crews going in there and renovating them, we now have the ability to tap into that equity, which pays Steve and I, allows us to continue to live our lives, invest in other things, recycle that money into other assets, all those things along the lines. I say all of this to let you know that just that structure alone, the Burr method, which is a beautiful strategy where we've used it to get up to 20 properties, 22 doors at this time of recording this, there's so much that goes into that. And when you are running a business and when you bring on employees and when you're managing multiple contracting crews and you're managing, tenants and you're managing managers and you're doing all these things, you tend to have things that fall through the cracks, right? Things that slip. And just in general, when you're building a business, it takes a while to see the return. Okay. And I'm saying this now, and when Steve and I bought our first house, which was April 12th of 2024, it's been a full year. And we've really just started to see the light at the end of the tunnel a little bit. We're not at the end of the tunnel. We're just starting to see the light, right? So when I left my job in June of 2024, I left with about $8,000 in my savings account. Might have been $6,000, somewhere around there. I basically had like 1 month of surviving. And I knew that I needed to put the pedal to the metal and make it happen in order to survive. And I was able to do that for the most part. And I talked about this a little bit a couple episodes ago. There was a period of time in October, November, and December where we hit a few roadblocks and we were like making no money. And at this point in time, it came at the absolute worst time, in my opinion, because it was my daughter's first birthday. It was my wife and I's second wedding anniversary, both on November 18th. It was Christmas. It was just a very, very hard time to be broke. And that was the reality, right? The reality was, I had at that point, Steve and I, we had, I don't know, it was probably like 12 houses at that point back in November. But yet at the same time, like we didn't have enough cash flow because we were still growing the portfolio to make any money off the cash flow necessarily. And we had about, 60 to 90 days where we just didn't have any refinances going. And because of that, we were both pretty broke. And because of that, I had to run up credit cards in order to make it happen. And this is all, again, part of the entrepreneurial cycle that you realize. And now that we're past this, it's a lot easier to reflect on it. But truthfully, in the moment, it was without question, it was without question the hardest financial time of my life, hands down. And again, like I said, especially around Christmas, around my daughter's first birthday, not being able to just be like, cool, whatever she wants, I'm going to get. Very, very hard thing. Very, very hard thing when you want to give your kids everything. So this 3-month period, these 90 days, very trying, very challenging, and, tested and financial hardship. So you grow, you start expanding on your credit cards, your utilization gets crushed. So back in, on April 21st, April 21st, I'm going to backtrack that 90 days. January 21st was when my lender pulled Steve and I's credit. And in order for us to qualify for refinances, our credit needs to be above 700. And he pulled it, and Steve's credit was above 700. Mine was below 700. And because Steve's was above 700, we were able to use his credit as the catalyst that gets us the refinance. Now, our lender has that credit good for 90 days. So keep in mind, this is January 21st. We just both of us. We just ran up our cards. They haven't totally reflected yet. We just finalized that. We haven't been really getting paid at this point, right? Well, on April 21st was the 90-day rotation that credit was going to be pulled again. And we have 2 refinances that are supposed to go through. And one of them is potentially able to go through on April 21st. That's the last day of that credit pull, right? And I know I'm jumping around a little bit. Just try to follow me on this. That's that last day on that credit pull. So we bought that house on January 21st. It's a duplex. Because there's a 90-day seasoning period to refinance, the first eligible day for us to refinance that deal would be April 21st, the last day that our credit is good. We have one other house that's a duplex that we bought back in October. It has been a huge thorn in our side. I've talked about it on the show a handful of times because there was a tenant that we were trying to get out for the longest time, and I was trying to be as nice as possible, which was a little bit of a mistake on my end. And she finally got out. She finally got out back in like February, and we needed to renovate that unit. So to put it in perspective here, we needed to get these deals refinanced before April 22nd, because April 22nd would be the time that the lender would be forced to pull our credit again, and both Steve and I's credits would have pulled under 700. And that would be a huge, huge problem because we wouldn't be able to tap into this equity. Now, prior to this, we've had a few refinances hit. We had 5 hit in January, but we didn't make too much on all 5 of those. And then we had 2 more hit, one in February and one in March. And those were very, very helpful. They allowed Steve and I to catch up a little bit, but not enough for us to boost our score fully. So we had, at this point, that April 21st was the time that we needed to get these 2 refinances through. And in history of working with my lender, who's phenomenal, by the way, it's taken pretty much about 2 full weeks, a little bit more sometimes, close to 20 days to get these deals through once we get him everything, right? So from start to finish, it's really about a 30 to 35 day process. And once we get him everything, it's usually taking about 15 to 20 days for underwriting to fully approve it, to get it scheduled with title, to get it closed, and to get it funded. So we were absolutely like full court pressing this as much as possible. And we got everything to him on April 11th. So we had 10 days to get these refinanced by the 21st of April. Otherwise, we were going to be in a really, really tough spot. And to put this in perspective, what we really would have had to do is we would have had to go find a new lender. We would have had to open a new LLC. We would have had to put someone like my wife on it who has good credit on the LLC, refinance them through that new LLC with her on it. Why I hate doing this is because I don't want someone else's name, my wife obviously being that person, or, Steve's, girlfriend, or, one of our moms, or whatever the case might be. We don't want anybody else on these properties because they're not their properties. And I think everybody that's a real estate investor, you might be able to relate to something like I'm talking about, right? Like at the end of the day, like you do what you got to do to get things done. That's how this goes, right? That's part of the business. But at the end of the day, it's also your business. You don't want to have to bring anybody else in that doesn't need to be involved, right? And again, my wife reaps the rewards of my business. These properties, they're going to her, they're going to our kids, right? When that time comes. But having said that, I don't want to have to involve anybody that isn't involved in general, right? So there was a hard press on this. On top of that, keep that in mind, like if that didn't go through, right, which I kind of gave it away a little bit, but if it doesn't go through, now we're talking about another 30 to 40 days of having to wait to get this whole thing through, which is a huge problem. We don't have that time to wait. We're tapping into this equity for 2 reasons. A, we need to pay ourselves, but B, we also have bills to pay to keep the business going, right? So all this to say, here's where I'll leave it. Everything was submitted to underwriting on April 11th. We have 10 days to get this through. Historically, it takes about 15 to 20 days. We're also approaching Easter weekend, a holiday weekend where people might take off, Good Friday, if they're very Catholic, right? Don't work on Good Friday, maybe even Easter Monday, you don't work. So we're at this point and we submit it to my lender, and, Steve and I are on a phone call, and he's just like, man, like, I don't think this is going to happen. Like, I think we need to start looking at other options. And there's been a handful of moments in my life where I've been like absolutely certain about things just because I'm so faith driven on what I think is going to occur. And I said to Steve, I was like, Steve, here's what's going to happen. I am going to aggressively pray for the outcome that we're looking for, but I'm going to even more so surrender it to God. And I'm going to do this over the next 9 days. And on April 21st, if it's God's will, we're going to hit these refinances. And if we do, I want you to make a little wager with me. You need to let me take you to church. So my partner, Steve, to give you a little bit of context here, who I love to death, he's my brother. He is not the most faith guy. He's Catholic. He was born Catholic. He was baptized Catholic. He made communion. He made confirmation. But somewhere along the lines, fell off his faith, which is a very, very common thing. And I think just me being faithful and being around him now for a full year, like really working closely with him, he's come around a little bit, but I'm still working on him as much as I can. But ultimately, conversion's in the heart. He's going to have to convert with inside, and Jesus is going to have to take the wheel on that one. But I pretty much, I know my boy Steve likes to bet occasionally in his past life. So I said, let's make a little bet. If it goes through on the 21st, you have to come to church with me. So he was like, I'm cool with that. Let's do it. And for the next 9 days, I was aggressively praying. And here is what I did. I'm going to break this down with you. But before I do that, I need to refer back to a story in the Bible, the wedding feast at Cana. For anybody that doesn't know about the wedding feast at Cana, Jesus and his apostles were at the feast with his mother Mary, and the wine ran out, right? And this is even bigger back then, and something that maybe we can't necessarily reflect on right now in our kind of current life of, having so much abundance. But when you have like a wedding back then, the wine was a big staple, right? That was really, really important. And if you ran out of wine, it was a really, really bad thing for like a wedding, right? I'm trying to think of like a comparison with this. It'd basically be like your photographer not showing up, right? Like it would ruin the wedding, right? Or, the food, the chef, like, couldn't make it to the venue and they couldn't make, the certain dishes or whatever the case might be, right? But it was so important. And when the bride and groom ran out of wine, Mary approaches Jesus and brings it up to him and says, "Hey, they ran out of wine," right? And I don't know the exact verse. I don't have my Bible on me right now, but they ran out of wine, and Jesus responds basically saying, like, "Woman, my hour has not yet come." And then Mary goes to Jesus' apostles and says, "Do whatever he tells you." And what we see here is and after that, what does Jesus do, right? Jesus goes to his apostles. He tells them what to do. He says, go fill up, these casks with water, and he brings them they bring them to Jesus, and he turns them into wine, his first miracle. And although the miracle itself is such a unbelievable, monumental moment, what I really pull from that is Mary's intercession. And this is what us Catholics love and believe, is we believe that Mary is our mother because Jesus gives her to us as our mother on the cross. He says to John, "Behold your mother," right? His beloved disciple. And we see that when we go to Mary, she brings our prayers and petitions to her son, Jesus. And Jesus Christ cannot deny Mary anything. And she simply goes to his apostles and she says, "Do whatever he tells you." And she knows with full-blown confidence and faith that her son is going to do what she asked him to do. So when I'm faced with this situation, I pray to Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior, but I pray to my saints, Mary, of course, right? And I ask for their intercession. I ask them to bring my prayers to Jesus Christ so that Jesus Christ could bring them to the Father, right? To bring them to God. So in this moment of absolute uncertainty with these refinances, I created a spiritual team. And I encourage everybody to do this. I really, really do. If you are facing a trial, you're facing some sort of tribulation, you are looking for answers, this is what I want you to do. You create a spiritual team. And here is exactly who my spiritual team consisted of. It consisted of Jesus Christ, Divine Mercy, right? He was the head coach of the team. Mary, under the title Undoer of Knots. So if you were unfamiliar with Mary's title, Undoer of Knots, it's beautiful. Just look it up. You'll see a bunch of beautiful art and imagery about it. She is the one that undoes any of these knots that are in our life that are holding us back from having a straight line to God, right? So she is my assistant coach. Saint Joseph, the model of workmen, right? The model of workers. He is my team captain, excuse me. Then I have on the team Saint Francis of Assisi, who we named my son after, and Saint Bernadette of Lourdes, who we named my daughter after. They are my prayer and poverty team. To give you a little bit of insight on both of them, Saint Francis of Assisi fasted for 40 days and 40 nights, just like Jesus did. And after he did that, he was given the stigmata. If you don't know what the stigmata is, a handful of saints have had it. It is literally, they have the wounds of Jesus Christ. They have 2 holes in their hands. They have 2 holes in their feet, and they have a wound on their side. St. Francis, after he fasted for 40 days, uniting himself to Christ, was blessed with the stigmata so that he might live a life closer connected to Christ. And the wound in his side consistently bled. So he is my prayer warrior. And also St. Francis came from wealth. He was a very, very wealthy family guy. He went to, I believe he went like away to be a scholar. He wanted to be a knight more than anything. He went to war. He had some struggles in war. He came back and realized that he is living for a material world, and he went into a life of poverty. He left his family, transfer of wealth. He left all of that. He went into a life of poverty. And then, did the whole fasting, got the stigmata, became one of the maybe, a top 10, if not more, greatest saint who ever lived. He is on the prayer and poverty team along with Saint Bernadette, who Saint Bernadette of Lourdes was visited by Our Lady of Lourdes, our Blessed Mother, who promoted the rosary and also gave her the spiritual and physical healings of the water of Lourdes. Another great story that you guys should listen into. But they are my prayer and poverty division on the team. Then you have Saint Jude. Saint Jude is known for the impossible. You pray to Saint Jude for things that seem impossible. And in truth, getting these refinances through by April 21st seemed very, very impossible to do after it's historically taken us those 15 to 20 days to get through underwriting. Then I also have St. Anthony on the team. St. Anthony is a miracle worker. He is known for miracles. A lot of people refer to him when you lose things. He's also a patron saint of lost items. Right now, my wife's looking for these pajama pants that I literally just got her for Easter. They're literally MIA right now. We're consistently praying to St. Anthony for them. But just in general, he is of lost things. He's of public speakers, but he's also of miracles. And you pray to him when you need a miracle. He is proven in that division. And then the last was St. Padre Pio. I think probably over this entire course, I maybe even grew closer to Padre Pio than anyone else in regards to my saints. And I'm close with all of them, in my opinion. But Padre Pio is a champion of the rosary. He's known for praying 50 to 100 rosaries a day. He is also a miracle worker and a mystic. And he also had the stigmata, the same thing that St. Francis had. And his hands consistently bled. He had to wear gloves every single day of his life. But again, it's a sign of union with Christ on earth. So that is the team. And over the 10-day period that we had, I prayed in what's called a novena. A novena is a 9-day kind of, structured prayer to that saint for their intercession, right? So I prayed a 9-day novena to Mary, undoer of knots, a 9-day novena to Saint Joseph, a 9-day novena to Saint Francis, Saint Bernadette, Saint Jude, Saint Anthony, and Saint Padre Pio. On top of that, I prayed a surrender novena to unite myself with my head coach there, Jesus Christ. The surrender novena, if you don't know about that novena, that's maybe, in my opinion, the most powerful novena of all time. You surrender yourself to God through that novena. And every time I've ever done that novena, what I've been hoping would happen has happened. And I don't say that in a way to be like, oh, you want a new car? Go pray the surrender novena. No, it's just when you're going through those tough times. On top of that, because we were going through Lent, prayed a sorrowful rosary every single day, prayed the 7 sorrows, the 7 swords of sorrow rosary to Mary every single day, and also prayed a rosary with Padre Pio, which if you have the Hallow app, they have a rosary that is from Padre Pio. He sang the rosary. So I was able to pray that. It's in Latin. So it was a little bit of a learning curve, but once I got the cadence down of the rosary, I was able to pray that consistently. And I'm just trying to think if there was anything else on there. I erased it. It was all on my whiteboard, but I'm pretty sure that was basically it. But it was basically, it totaled about 2 hours of prayer a day. And again, I was praying about an hour a day prior to that. So adding an extra hour, a little bit of an adjustment. But ultimately, I believed so confidently that by praying to these saints for their intercession, they would deliver it. And if they didn't, I prayed for the grace to accept it. I prayed for the grace to accept it and to understand that it is the will of the Father. It's not my will, right? And ultimately, his will always be better than mine. And even in the times that I can't really understand, right? And even like when I look back on those 3 months of October, November, December, where, Steve and I basically made no money. I maxed out my credit cards and was in a tough financial bind. I look back on those times and I think about just how much I grew in that spiritual poverty, which is what I talk about all the time with Rosary and real estate, right? The spiritual poverty, the generational wealth, growing in that spiritual poverty, understanding that happiness doesn't come from money, and also understanding that when I'm close to God, I will get through all things. So we're praying these 9 days, we're praying this novena. And as this is going on, all these novenas, all these rosaries, all these prayers, you have a few days of silence, right? It's like, cool, the 11th, it's submitted, the 12th, the 13th, the 14th, you're not hearing anything leading up to the end of that week, right? The weekend rolls around, you consistently are praying and praying. Then it starts to get a little bit closer, right? We're entering into Tuesday, start hearing a few things, right? Underwritings, they send back a couple things that they need done. Prayer to, Mary, undoer of knots, Mary, undoer of knots, any knots holding up the underwriting, please undo them for us. Please undo them so we might close on this on the 21st. And ultimately, I could bring my brother Stephen to church with me, consistently praying. Wednesday rolls around. Wednesday is a very, very special day to St. Joseph. Wednesday is a day that's dedicated to St. Joseph. However, this Wednesday was during Holy Week, which is also the betrayal from Judas to Jesus. But I prayed extra hard to my team captain, St. Joseph, on this Wednesday. And I asked for his intercession on this. And I prayed a specific rosary to St. Joseph. And boom, 10:02, one of the properties, refi cleared, closing April 21st, the exact 90th day for the seasoning for the refinance on the last day that we could get the credit. Boom, that's one. Thursday rolls around, right? Praying extra hard to St. Bernadette on this one, asking for her to intercede for me, asking for her to bring it to our Blessed Mother. Thursday rolls around. I'm getting a haircut. I get a call from my lender. Boom, cleared to close. Both scheduled for April 21st. Good Friday rolls around. Few things not necessarily going on, right? HUDs come out, the final closing docs, not necessarily approved by the lender yet, but we go into Easter weekend with the cleared to close on both of them. Come on Monday, guess what? Go to closing at 10 a.m., boom, close both of them, both funded on Monday. And here's why this is so great. Because now I could take the money that we made from the refinances. Steve and I could pay ourselves. We put a little bit of a cushion there. We get some really well-deserved money sent to us. But then we could also take a lot of this money, pay down those cards that we have the high utilizations on, get our scores back above 700. Now we don't have any more of these problems. And I'm telling you this right now. When you give it to God and you put it in the hands of your saints, you ask them to intercede on your behalf, exactly what will happen is meant to happen. And now Steve and I are excited. We feel good. We feel relieved. We thank God. And guess what? We're going to Capitol Grill tonight. And you know where we're going before? Adoration Hour. And I'm bringing my boy Steve with me. So we're going to do a little prayer sesh before that. And then we're going to go out. We're going to enjoy some steaks and we're going to enjoy some bourbon. Which is great because it's been 90 days since I've drank because of Exodus 90. So I'm looking forward to having a glass with my boy and to celebrating it. And we are now in year 2 of D&D Equities, as April 12th was our 1-year anniversary. So we are going to set some new yearly goals. So I just wanted to leave you with this. If you're an entrepreneur, you're going to go through it. Prepare yourself for it. Understand that it's going to happen. You need to push through. And regardless if you're an entrepreneur or not, if you are going through tough times, pray to Mary, pray to your saints, ask for their intercession on behalf of you, ask them to make you a perfect mold of who you need to be in the presence of Jesus Christ. and understand that God's will is always going to be greater than your will. But if you bring these prayers and these petitions to your saints, they will answer your prayers. I promise you that. And if you really, really need true assistance, build a spiritual team. And my spiritual team, yeah, they are at rest right now, right? I continue to pray to my saints always. Of course, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph are always on my tongue when I'm praying. But my saints that have helped me, they're at rest. But I'm telling you right now, they will be back because I'm always going to need them, just as we always do. So I hope that everybody has a great day. I want you to remember, pray the rosary, buy real estate, save your soul through the rosary, save your, retirement and your future bank accounts and, any hardships that your kids might face through real estate. And I appreciate you guys listening. Thank you so much. I hope you have a great day. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace out.